Start streaming. Hello everyone, this is Daniel Glenn with Regarding 365 and welcome to our fourth debate. This debate is all about all org teams, and I have a motley crew with me here today, so I'm going to allow you to get to know them a little bit. So let's do a quick 30-second introduction, everybody, if you will. Start with Damien, please.
Thanks, Daniel. So, yes, my name is Damien Margaritis. I'm from a company called InSync Technology in Melbourne, Australia. I am a Microsoft Skype and Teams professional. In a previous iteration, still am a Microsoft Certified Master in Link Technologies. So, very kind of narrow and deep capability in the UC space.
Wonderful. Sarah.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Haase. I live here in the U.S., based in Minnesota. I'm an enterprise collaboration strategist, tend to work for large organizations, helping them figure out their Office 365 and Microsoft initiatives, mostly focused on strategy, governance, and user adoption.
Thank you, Sarah. Alistair.
Good right now. My name is Alistair Pugin. I'm coming to you live. This is my show. I invited all of these people. Alistair Pugin. I'm coming to you live from Seattle. I do stuff with stuff, and I'm a stunt double for Owen because he couldn't make it.
Thank you, Alistair, for jumping in. Appreciate that.
And when you see my finger, it's because it's coming from the front of my... See that?
Thank you very much, Alistair. Your time's up. Dean.
Hey everybody, it's Dean Swann. I'm the director of product for tyGraph, an Office 365 reporting and analytics company. I'm also an Office apps and services MVP. I love just to watch Alistair do whatever he does on camera, which is always a lot of fun. Glad to be here. And like Sarah, I'm from the Minneapolis, Minnesota part of the world.
Thank you very much, and don't encourage Alistair, please. That's a ground rule. Brad.
Hello, everyone. Brad Grissom with Southwest Airlines. I'm a senior advisor on our digital workplace solutions team here. My job is to really think about our strategy around the digital workplace, which now, in big part, is Microsoft 365 focused. So working on rolling out a lot of awesome products from Microsoft. And really wish we would downsize down to 999 folks so that I could have an org-wide team. So ready to get going.
Thank you, Brad. And last but certainly not least, Darrell. Oh, yes.
Darrell C. Webster, practicing senior adoption specialist at law for Adopt and Embrace in Australia and New Zealand. Be prepared for a battle. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, sir. So the way this is going to work, talking about all org teams and channels, is we're going to kind of go through and each person is going to have 3 minutes to state their opinion, their position, and give the pros to what they consider the right way to do this. So we're going to start off in the same order that we did the intros. So Damien, will you please give us your position on all org teams?
Thanks, Daniel. Okay, so for a little over a year now, Microsoft has been making a huge push with their latest flagship product and runaway success, Microsoft Teams. This is a tool designed to sit in front of various technologies that exist in Office 365, giving us that single client experience in order to simplify everyday tasks. For the millions of global users that currently use one of the most well-known Office 365 tools, Skype for Business Online, there is an event on the horizon, a when, not an if. Skype for Business Online will be switched off, and Microsoft Teams will take its place to bring together both communication and collaboration experiences in the one suite. What does that have to do with organizational-wide teams or Yammer? As we move into this new world where Teams is front and center, as an organization, I'm going to be hard-pressed not to use Teams in some fashion, even if I'm pulled in, kicking and screaming. This, however, cannot be said for Yammer. I need to use Teams. I don't need to use Yammer. Yammer is a tool that by its very nature is designed to provide additional value to an existing organization's toolset, specifically something known as enterprise social. Speaking now for the thousands of smaller organizations who have yet to hit critical mass with their staff numbers, is this something that's important to look for an enterprise social solution to take off and be useful? I need to hit critical mass. If I know almost everyone in my organization and most are in my inner loop, do I need the outer loop Yammer provides? If I have thousands of staff in my organization, sure, enterprise social makes a lot of sense. But what about 50 or 100? Wouldn't it be great if there was another way to disseminate information to all my employees, a way to get a similar experience without the need to add yet another tool for my users to pick up and embrace? That's why I'm for organizational-wide teams. Giving organizations another way to communicate with all staff makes sense without the need for Yammer. Let's give people the choice.
Thank you, Damien. Next up is Sarah. Please take it away.
Perfect. Not surprising, I'm going to represent the opposite viewpoint. So small 50 to 100 person companies, sure, an org-wide team might be a great opportunity. I work for large organizations, very large organizations, 50,000 plus, and an organization-wide team not only will not be made available by Microsoft, it frankly would be a disaster for teams of that size. It's frankly way too much noise for way too large of an organization. And the UI and capability of Teams, I don't see as being a match for that enterprise social capability, whether you're using Yammer or you're using another capability that's not a Microsoft tool. I think that while it's tempting to make this debate about Yammer versus Teams, I think that that's actually a mistake. The purpose of Teams has always been to provide a rich collaborative experience for teams and interloop people to work together. I think insisting that teams start doing everything that email can do, everything that Yammer can do, everything that everything else in the world can do, does a disservice to teams more than it helps teams as we move forward. So I think that we need to avoid having a teams can do everything approach. It's not a hammer that we're looking to replace all email with everything Teams. So I think we need to be realistic about what we should be using Teams for and what we should be using Yammer for. And for large orgs, an org-wide team is not it.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. And Alistair, you are up, sir.
Whose team am I on? Is that a question?
No, you have to know that yourself.
Yes. Well, look, I'm a stunt double, so yeah, it's got to follow course. So switching it all on, I think that's not today's debate. Org-wide teams, the death of Yammer. There, I said it. And Damien, thank you for introducing that so well. I'm just following what he says. What is the biggest problem right now when we actually have to disseminate information, if you're not using Yammer, to everyone in your organization inside of Teams? So you got the SharePoint tab, and that only surfaces stuff from SharePoint, the SharePoint team site that the team is connected to. You can't surface org-wide or intranet type information through that format. The fact that they've actually now gone and said org-wide teams, yes, we know that we can't give it to 10,000 people, you give it to 999,000 people. So being able to disseminate information, push information to an already occupied ecosystem is where the value prop of using org-wide teams is. Instead of having to glue Yammer, because yes, Yammer is not innovating as fast as Teams is. So the fact that they've gone and said org-wide teams, the company that I work for, great, because you don't have to add people and it's not managed that way and you can disseminate information. So I, for one, am very excited about the fact that you can now get group-wide communication or top-level HQ communication out to everyone. And that's huge value. It's the missing piece to Teams when it comes to chat-based information management.
Thank you, Alistair. Dean, you are up.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. I'd like to just start off with asking a question. What problem are we trying to solve? With org-wide teams, I'm not sure that there is an issue. And I also find it really interesting that, why do we jump to, hey, let's kill Yammer? This is just another reason. I like to think, along the lines of Sarah, in terms of, how come it is, Teams is supposed to now be the everything tool? Do we really need to make it that? And my answer to that would be no. It's not. It has its lane, just like Yammer has its lane. And I'd really like to focus on, the strengths of each of the tools rather than, adding a feature that I don't see as necessary, at least at this point, for Teams.
Thank you very much. Brad.
Thank you, Daniel. So should we use org-wide Teams? So have any of y'all heard that question, what to use when? Well, the new answer is Teams 24/7. Use it all the time. That's the way it's going to be the true hub for teamwork. It has everything you need. It's cross-platform, mobile, desktop, and web. It's got chat and presence, voice and video, online meetings, screen sharing, group chat, collaboration, chatbots, app integration. What else do you need? That's everything. Bring everybody to the party in an org-wide team, and you get massive adoption. Now, I get it. It's not for everyone. If you have a company like mine with 65,000 people, you can't get them all in there. But that's why Microsoft's made the practical limitation right now on 1,000 users. So keep it small, and that may grow over time. But right now, it's for smaller and medium-sized orgs, which are typically nimble, and they need to be nimble. And Teams is going to provide that nimbleness that Yammer just can't.
Thank you very much. And Darrell, I think that's your name. I don't remember.
Darrell C. Webster.
Right, C. Webster. Sorry. Yes.
Thank you. Yes. Look, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, audience. The opposition team would have you believe that this is a conversation about killing Yammer. This is a conversation about making Teams to be the full inner loop and outer loop and everything else loop to be the answer to all tools. Well, I have a tool right here, and you might say that it is much like Teams. What is your first impression when you see this tool? What do you see first, and what do you want to use? You probably want to use the hammer, don't you? This tool does have other implements, of course, but much like the opposition here, they want to use Teams as a hammer. Boom, 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 job done. The fact is that we have conversations in all sorts of platforms. In fact, part of the reason that we shifted some of this to other tools and out of email, was because email was getting too much. Do we now shift the problem into Teams and have everything there? Is it the right tool, truly, to be able to have those threaded conversations and be able to keep up with those conversations? Can you imagine a conversation being held in the communications channel with 1,000 people or more? Might I say, too, it's not a limitation at this point of 1,000. That is actually a technical limitation and something they really need to think through. So it is not the question of the death of Yammer. It is not the question of, can this tool be the answer to everything? But rather we should follow our conversation habits, and we should be able to step out to another room and have that conversation somewhere else. Much like we do with a boardroom, with a project room, we need to go somewhere else to do it. Or otherwise, that room that we're always in is going to get awfully noisy. Thank you.
And thank you, Darrell C. Webster. So now we're going to open up a time for rebuttal. And when you want to say something, please say your name so I can call on you. I'd like to kind of go back to the first couple of people that talked and get kind of their insight into what they heard. So, Damien, can we start with you? And what about that question that Dean brought up of what is the problem we're trying to solve here? Why are we turning on, having this all org team, this channel? What problem are we solving?
Well, I think the problem that's trying to be solved is, with Teams today, if we wanted to have, most of the members of an organization as a member, the actual management of that was quite painful. So it was something that I had to manually manage as an IT pro and as administrator to make sure that everyone in my organization was a member of a team, or they then had to opt in or whatever the issues like that. I think what they're trying to solve here is to give organizations an additional choice, right? So whilst I know that the debate here is org-wide Teams versus Yammer, I don't think that's actually the right way to approach it. I think a few people have made that point. It's an additional tool that we now have at our disposal. And I think to the point of what problem are we trying to solve? For organizations, as I said, that may not have Yammer in their organization today, but they have Teams already, we're giving them an additional choice and capability that they didn't have beforehand.
So what about, though, Alistair, what about all the noise that this is going to cause, right? What do organizations do with all the noise?
So, Dan, if you actually went to go see the post about and the docs.microsoft.com article about guidance around using org-wide Teams, you'd know that you can switch off comments. It's a unidirectional, not bidirectional. Bidirectional got talking to other team. It's unidirectional. You want to do group-wide announcements, you can't have 700 people communicate in one channel. Doesn't make sense. Threaded comms inside a team still suck. Yammer's much better at augmenting that. So org-wide Teams is really about being able to get information out to everyone.
Okay. Darrell, did you have a comment?
It just sounded like he said that Yammer is more appropriate for that as a tool. And I would agree there, Alistair.
Threaded chat in Yammer is better. I did not say that the tool is better.
The threaded chat is essential, isn't it, to have good conversation in large formats.
I just said that we're not having conversation in org-wide Teams, Darrell. What part of listening to me are you not listening to?
I think I'm struggling with your thread, Alistair. So let's point that out to another thread.
So Damien's got
yes,
a question.
Damien.
Yeah, I think we're arguing a point that doesn't need to be argued again. It comes down to critical mass, right? So once you hit a specific size of organization, yes, the noise is going to become overwhelming if you're using a tool that doesn't give you more granular control of the communication stream in both directions. But there will be a point in an organization where you're still small enough to kind of manage that. And there are tools, and as Alistair said, guidance within some of the blogs that are out there now and what you should switch off within organizational-wide teams so you don't get bombarded with information. For example, turn off @general as a way to communicate with people so everyone's not getting, smashed with notifications. And then, of course, as an organization gets bigger and it starts to make more sense, perhaps Yammer starts to play more of a role for an organization.
Dean, does that make sense?
This is Sarah.
Oh, Sarah, go ahead. Yes.
Perfect. So I think that it's important to consider the culture of the organization as well. Clearly, we're representing here ideas from many different sizes and types of organizations. I think we need to remember how people desire to work together. I think Darrell C. Webster went after that a little bit in his 3-minute opener, right? If people enjoy using Yammer to be able to connect to other people that they might not know in their organization, post questions, have a threaded response for responses to those questions, and eventually coming in early 2019, the ability to mark one of those answers as a best answer. I think that if you want those kind of features, if that's a culture fit for your need or for a use case or for your organization, then it's something that you should leverage Yammer for, because Teams doesn't currently have those capabilities. If you appreciate that Teams allows you to be able to quickly see, or eventually will, your SharePoint news, your Yammer tab, and all of those things within Teams, and you're already spending most of your day in Teams, then by all means, leverage Teams. It doesn't have to be a concrete answer. It's one is better than the other. Al, I see you waving. I'm sure Daniel does too.
Alistair,
so it doesn't have to be one or the other.
I got a point for that too.
Okay, go ahead then. Yes, please. Brad.
Well, Sarah, you just mentioned that Teams doesn't have that feature yet, but didn't sound like Yammer did either. I believe you said that was a 2019 feature. So neither of them have the feature to mark it as correct. So I don't see how that's relevant in this debate.
I think it's very relevant to know that there's a roadmap in place and we can see that capability coming. Might I say too that Teams and org-wide Teams will become the outer loop when the Yammer tab arrives. Yes, that will truly make it available. Look, going back to another point about can Yammer fit into an organization which is 50 or 100 or even 10 users? Yes, it can. I come back to my original point that sometimes we need to step out and use a different tool.
So just following
You mentioned rooms. Sorry, go ahead, Al.
So there's a question from Sarah Haase. Yammer adoption is hit or miss depending on company culture. Why would teams drive more adoption? Would it? So I put it to the board that is convened today, seeing as we have to update our colloquialisms to match the brightness of Darrell's tie. But has it really? So the pecking or picking order. If you haven't used Yammer before, are you going to use Yammer? First thing for me. Then the picking order of when people move to the cloud. So what do? They move mail, then they move identity, and then they move Teams. They go straight to Teams. So mail, identity, OneDrive, Teams. SharePoint and Yammer don't feature in those conversations. They don't. It's not topical. It's not hot right now. The marketing budget for Teams is high up on the food chain, and it's the most active usage because of the demographic. We sit on WhatsApp, we sit on WeChat, we sit on all of those chat-based programs, and that's how we communicate. So gravitating to Teams is naturally going to happen over and above Yammer. Also, Yammer should not be compared to Teams. Yammer is enterprise social. It's a culture shift. It's a huge change, working out loud. And if you get the right Yammer consultants, like the MVPs that we have for Yammer, they'll be able to implement in your.
So wait, you're saying I'd like to stop you there, Alistair, permanently, but I won't. But I will say you're
Did you read my blog, Dan?
To implement this org-wide team, you're going to have to hire consultants and figure out how you're doing this, and I don't know that all organizations look at.
Oh my God, Yammer, buddy, Yammer. I said Yammer.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'd like to ask a question that's being posed in the chat room, and I'm asking Damien this. I think, do you see this? You're in the yes column here. Do you see this as being just for company announcements, or is this for discussion?
I think it can be used for both. I don't see any reason why it can't be used for discussion. Again, making sure that the appropriate controls are put in place to ensure that it's not just noise, by making sure that only certain contributors or owners can post in certain kind of global areas, and perhaps being more granular with the control of what individual members can do in channels and whatnot. But I think you touch on one of the kind of strengths that Teams has over Yammer, in my opinion. It's a much better place when it comes to disseminating files, right? So if I want to upload files, if I want to have a place to have, onboarding information, or OH&S information, or any of that kind of stuff, Teams makes it quite easy to do that. I think Teams is a better platform for that type of dissemination of information than what Yammer is.
Do you agree, Sarah, with that?
Daniel. Oh, my Lord, no. And I think that this is a key and central point that I don't think either Teams or Yammer is the appropriate place for that. And please, can we talk about organizational-wide news, SharePoint, hub sites? There's a lot of content that we should put in the best possible location. And this is exactly what I was talking about when I opened with Teams is not the answer to every solution and problem that you ever had or didn't know that you had. And it is a mistake, and it's actually not in Teams' favor for us to treat it that way, because that's, I think it's the surest way to kill the joy of Microsoft Teams, which is a product that I love using. I think we need to go back to thinking about what are the use cases that we need to solve. If it's to give visibility to CEO messaging to employees, well, that's a use case. What do we think in our culture and our organization is the best location to put that information? And for some companies, that might be SharePoint and a hub site. In other companies, it might be an org-wide team. In other companies, it might be Yammer. There doesn't have to be a single right answer. It's the right answer for that organization.
Brad, did you have a comment?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with Sarah. Put that kind of information in SharePoint, and then pin that tab right up there on that org-wide team channel. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, Darrell C. Webster at Law here. Look, I'd like to mention too that yes, SharePoint is the right place to have it. It's a very rich way to share more than just text, videos, all sorts of things you can embed in there. Guess what? You can also embed conversation in there. And what is driving that? Yammer. I don't see Teams ever being embeddable. So I'm glad that it loops the whole organization in using Yammer and having conversation alongside content. That's really valuable. It enriches that content.
Do you agree with that, Alistair? Do you agree that SharePoint and in conjunction with Yammer is the place? Why is that not the place to have your all organization conversations?
So I didn't know Darrell was a Yammer MVP. I understand that now. So from an org-wide dissemination of information, Sarah was right on the money about using a com site. Well, no, where you're going to have to use a team site and then surfacing that data that way. I've always wanted it. From a hub site perspective, you can do it that way. And it's great because now you can start surfacing more than just random messages inside of a very siloed team environment, right? And for me, being able to surface that sort of information, I don't particularly care about a chat embedded in a page. It's the point then. We've got a Teams client. Now I must alt tab out and go to Yammer. Not that Yammer's UWP is worth anything, because it's shite, right? So why do I want to alt tab out of stuff when I can stay inside of a single point of entry with one version of the truth, which knowledge management practitioners have been praying to the holy Jeebus for since the beginning of time, and we're finally getting that with Teams. So yes, I agree to a certain degree with Sarah, but Teams for everything. The end.
Dean, do you agree with that? Teams for everything?
No, I don't at all. I have a lot of respect for Al, but I don't agree with that at all. And what I would say is, somebody really wise once told me, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I really think that the all org is an example of that. I mean, look, we all just got back from Ignite, and we spent a lot of time talking about, here's what Yammer's good at, here's what Teams is good at, and we get back, and now we have to explain to, the user base yet another feature that, may or may not fit, but they're going to be bringing it up. It's another log on the what to use Windfire, and it just makes things a little more difficult. Now, I will cede the point that I like the thought that, in small organizations, I can kind of see that. I'm not willing to go all the way over to the yes camp just yet.
What do you classify as small, though, Dean?
Well, exactly. I mean, 1,000 seems pretty random to me. I just don't know what the right number is, but 1,000 seems kind of, like a one of these, in the air. But what I know for sure is, when you have, you think about the experience people have had in Yammer, one of the things, once you get pretty mature, you start to think about how is all company best used. Some people even just want to turn it off, So, I go back to, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I love Teams. Don't get me wrong. I just don't. It feels like we're trying to cram, like we did with email. We're trying to cram everything into Teams, and I just don't think that's appropriate at this juncture.
And I think a lot of organizations may be afraid of that, right? For it becoming the next email where we get bombarded. Brad, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, no, I want to talk about those use cases some more. So how would a team of, let's say, fairly less than 1,000, right? I wouldn't, if I'm at 975, I'm probably not going to try to do that since I'm very close to the limitation, right? And if I'm growing, so let's say it's more in the 500 or so range. It'd be a great and easy place to do surveys, to get a pulse on what's going on with the organization. Great for video delivery. We're using Teams right now for video, right? So it's a great place for leadership video delivery. Spotlighting wins so that everybody can see what's going on with your company as it's growing. Showing and celebrating those goals as you attain them. I mean, you could even use it as a place to spotlight new hires as you grow and you're starting to reach that bigger limit there of the org-wide team. I think there's tons of ways that you could use this to again, for a small company that's growing or maybe even that's stable. And if you're a stable company, well under 1,000 users, then you're probably a pretty tight-knit family. So bring the family together for the feast, and you do that in the org-wide team, I think.
That's an interesting concept because, at family reunions, I don't know if that's something that every around the world happens, but here in the U.S. it does. And my experience with family reunions is it's quite a mess, and it's really a lot of stuff going on, and it's really hard to comprehend all that. But so I'm just playing off of that.
That's a great point, but hey, but that's your mess, right? And
that's my mess.
When grandma says that crazy thing, everybody's like, "Oh, there goes grandma again." Okay. That's pretty fun. So you're gonna miss that. You're gonna miss that if you don't participate, Daniel.
I'd like to pose a question to Sarah, Dean, and Darrell. And you all three can answer it, or whoever wants to take it. But what changes could Microsoft make to this concept of all org team? What changes could Microsoft make that would cause you to reconsider and want an all org team?
I'll jump in first. I think that some of it is some of the features that we've already talked about, and some of those features, I think threaded comments would really help, I think, and as I noted, and as Brad confirmed, things like being able to, if it's a question that's being asked, actually have it as a question and demarcate it, make it look a little bit different, which is a feature that I actually really like in Yammer, that praise looks a little bit different than an announcement or than a question. The ability, if you pose a question in Teams or in Yammer, frankly, that you can mark one as like the best answer where it's demarcated somehow. But I think the challenge lies within that, and Microsoft, I can guarantee you the product teams have to be talking about this, is if we start taking best of features in all of our tools and start multi-purposing them to be in every one of our tools, how are we muddying the waters of what to use when? And then it becomes a popularity contest or a personality fit test, even more than it is now.
Yeah, I'll add something to that. What I think is strong in the Yammer side of things is the all activity feed, which certainly operates better than the Teams activity feed. I go to one place and I can see all my conversations there, things that I've followed, replied to. Oh, and even conversations that I might not even be going into a group to find, I can go to that one place and see something and inject some value into some conversation. I'm seeing that as a thing that's missing in Teams in general, let alone all org-wide teams. And I'd also like to be able to go out to external places and still be logged in and receiving those messages. I'm struggling with the whole tenant switching thing. I've got to be logged into another tool, sadly, Skype even at this stage, to continue to be available for conversations.
Darrell, why are you bashing other things that have got nothing to do with org-wide teams, like tenant switching?
Because we have to use them, Alistair, to get the job done. That's why we can't use all org teams.
But is it? Let me ask you this though, Darrell. Isn't that a small use case with Teams because people who are tenant switching are mostly consultants in those types of this field?
What about all the teams we get invited to as guests? So we didn't have to be consultants. We're now having lots and lots of organizations that are jumping on Teams and using them and inviting each other to it. As soon as they switch to these other...
About tenant switching, I didn't switch a tenant to join this call. I clicked the link and it opened up in Teams. It didn't matter what tenant I was in.
Right, that's just the meeting though, Al. That's not the all org experience.
Oh, so wait, you just double standards. You're a hypocrite.
No name calling.
I told you couldn't, and now
that's Darrell C. hypocrite. Thank you.
No. Can I just second Alistair's comments? I have all faith that Microsoft will eventually solve the tenant switching problem. I think it's born out of the way the product was developed. It came out of nowhere. It's taken off, and it's something that will be resolved. And I don't think we should be bringing that into the debate into whether or not org-wide teams are useful. I think there will be an answer for that. I have a few answers for that already. I use multiple tabs in my Microsoft Edge window to access different tenants. There's a few different ways you can do it, but I have confidence that Microsoft will solve this problem.
Multi-account containers in Firefox solves that problem as well.
Now let's put on the user adoption hat here. Do we really expect an average end user to get their head around that experience? The workaround.
That's a good
They will
question.
run the show long before they get
the workaround is irrelevant.
Teams,
It's irrelevant in this conversation.
Correct.
Thank you.
Irrelevant,
Brad.
apparently.
Irrelevant.
I would
it's
challenge.
like a political debate.
Yeah, so Sarah,
switching
you're-
has
User
nothing to do
adoption
with
is
worldwide
never
teams.
irrelevant. User adoption is never irrelevant.
Tell-
Without user adoption, it
No,
doesn't
user
matter
adoption.
your worldwide communications. Because nobody
I didn't
gets
use user adoption. Tenant switching is irrelevant to this conversation.
But Sarah, were you saying though that with the comment of we don't need to worry about how users would do that right now, and you're equating that to user adoption? Do you think that goes together with the technology issues and trying to get users to use that?
Absolutely, I do. Yes, and I think that we were talking about a very specific thing with tenant switching and user adoption. But I think Darrell's point in that, and Darrell, I'm going to jump in and make an assumption, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that sometimes it's a single pain point like that that can make a difference between users being willing to give it a go and users being not willing to give it a go. And I think that's what Darrell was getting at. Not that the tenant switching is the thing, but it could be a thing that impacts some of the users. And I think that all of those are important because if we look at whether it's Yammer or whether it's any other tool, users sometimes will be very quick to adopt, sometimes they won't. If they're not already likely to want to adopt, they will look for those pain points as reasons to justify not.
Okay.
Speaking of quick to adopt or not, I think Teams is the fastest growing and most adopted application in Microsoft history.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
right.
I think OneDrive
check.
would be actually.
No.
They made the announcement at Ignite this year.
Yeah, but what's the definition of an active user?
They've got the most consumption. There's 327 million active users.
It seems like a pretty good adoption.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think, Brad, that's the point because nobody on this call, in fact, I said I love Teams. So it's not about whether or not we like Teams. It is about an org-wide team and whether or not that would be adopted.
Bring your team back to the real world.
And I think an org-wide team would also probably achieve 100% adoption simply because it's been enforced, right? But then is it being used? So you could say they're active users.
Same thing for Yammer, Slack, SharePoint, doesn't matter. If I've got 100,000 people in AD, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that there's 100,000 users. So your argument doesn't matter.
No, it does. It does, because in an org team, you are including everyone. But will everyone be using it?
Like everything else that we use, will everyone be using it? We don't know. So it's not about efficacy, it's about functionality.
Although
you can do everything in SharePoint.
I would add to that and I guess this goes back to the question that was in the YouTube chat as well. It's going to be very difficult to avoid using Teams within an organization if you want to use, as I was arguing, something like Skype Business Online today, which is going to become Teams. If I wanted to use any of the Microsoft communication stack, I will have the Teams client, so I will have that experience. Adding org-wide Teams is a smaller jump than deploying something side by side with the tools that I have to use as part of my business.
So let me ask another question, and this one is, I'd really like the answers from Alistair, Brad, and Damien about what if Microsoft got rid of the 1,000 user limit? Is that something that would be, you think, would that cause issues, or you don't care what the limit would be? I know Brad mentioned that limit when he was talking in his intro, but would that cause issues with the way you think about using an all-org?
Yeah, so since I mentioned it, I'll start. I think it would. I think Teams is for high-velocity chat. I think it's for smaller groups, and less than 1,000 is definitely smaller than 100,000. So I don't know if I would turn on that ginormous of a fire hose at an organization. So I think the limit's good because it provides some practical guidance of what the expectations should be. And I think Microsoft, I think that's exactly what they're doing by putting that limit in, because it's not a technical limitation, because you can create your own team with more than 1,000. So it's not a technical limitation. So they're providing that practical guidance. So it would change it for me. Yeah.
I'll add to that too, Brad, that I actually don't see myself using an org-wide team for anywhere near 1,000 staff. Similar to my original argument, I see it as being useful for the smaller organizations, the mid-market type organizations. So I'd actually be looking at an alternative to an org-wide team well and truly before I got to the 1,000 user mark.
That's interesting. Alistair, do you agree with that? If it was lifted, this 1,000, are you thinking that we should only have, is it for small and medium only, or is it for every organization if they're willing to adopt?
Look at how Yammer gets used in organizations that have 20, 30,000 users. I can testify to that. I've worked for Dimension Data. We had, I think, between 28 and 29,000 users, and they used Yammer extensively for group-wide communication. Worked perfectly. In this case, org-wide teams, much of the same thing. Remember, from a governance perspective, if you make sure that governance policies are in place, so you want to interact with people, use Poly as a poll to get people to vote, instead of getting them to have a chat thread of 300 comments, which is neither here nor there. So be strategic about how you use org-wide teams to get messaging out there, because that's why it's there, right? That's what it's for. It's not to talk to 1,000 people. It's impossible to have a threaded conversation with 1,000 people. This doesn't make sense. It's like doing broadcasting. Why do you have Teams broadcast or Skype broadcast for town halls? It's the same thing. It's one way. It's unidirectional. So this is a great way to keep the user inside of Teams and still get the message, because nobody alt-tabs. Generic users don't alt-tab. They don't even know that alt-tab exists.
So what you're saying, and what I've heard Damien and Brad say, is it could be, an organization could be too big to use an all-org team unless you do something like it's a one-way push, where it's not a conversation, it's more of a announcement kind of place. Is that more or less what we've kind of landed on?
I think the more members, or the more people involved in a communications group, let's say, the more control you need. I think that's an accurate statement. So to what Alistair was saying, with live broadcasts, what we've done with Skype broadcasts in the past, it is that one-way street from a media perspective. Anything coming back the other way is managed. We use Microsoft Pulse to manage what was coming back the other way with thumbs up and thumbs down, or kind of very limited information. But if you actually tried to open it up in both directions without having some kind of granular control, then you're going to have a mess. And I think that's really important to take into account with org-wide teams as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I see that same kind of behavior happening even in a 200-person Skype call. So as people start to talk and chat and take basically the concentration away from whoever's presenting, it's almost impossible to keep up with that conversation on the side there. It's
Dean
difficult.
And Sarah, do you agree with that? The Damien, Alistair, and Brad have said, make sure you manage it well, and it's not a conversation of 1,000 people. Do you agree? Like, can you live with that, or is it more like, no, I still am? It would be too busy for me.
Well, Sarah, do you want to jump in? If not, I can.
Go for it.
Yeah. So. The great thing about a debate is you pick a side, and I picked a side based on my gut reaction of, again, what problem is Teams trying to solve by having this feature? And if it's, if Teams was thinking, hey, Slack has this, Well, okay, I get it. You want to be at feature parity with your competition. That makes a lot of sense to me. But I'll stick to the no at the debate level, right? Yep. It's important to have a heuristic, right? What I like about what the yes team is saying is, look at these particular business cases. Yeah, that makes some sense. But, at a high level, when you just come at this, we've got features and we're swimming in them. And it's hard to deal with, all of this from a user standpoint, let alone a collaboration specialist like a lot of us on this call are. So, I would say, I'm going to stick with no at the high level. But as we dig in, I'm going to start agreeing with some of what Brad said, with some of what Al said, Damien. But let's kind of look at it from that standpoint, and I'd be okay with that.
Gotcha. Well, I've run. Hold on one second, Sarah. I'll come right to you. I've run out of water, so we're going to need to wrap up our session. So last thoughts quickly, Sarah, please.
Use cases are the most important. Determine what you need, and then determine what the best culture fit and feature functionality is for your org.
Awesome. Thank you.
Strongly agree.
Big thumbs up from Dean. Anyone else would like a final comment before we sign off?
This is Brad.
Yes, I'd like to close today's session by saying that...
Alistair, Brad, go ahead.
I mean, I just don't get what the fear is from everyone. Just because the text goes a different direction, it can't be an all org. I don't get it. I mean, we just get used to text going a different direction, and everybody's gonna be fine.
Okay, Alistair.
I vote Dean the most intelligent on the call because you used the word heuristic. All right, so we should actually be listening to him, except that he said yeah. So yes. I end that way. Well done, Dean. We appreciate your commentary. Thank you, cheers.
I think the real reason that Alistair said he was intelligent was because he said, I agree with Alistair.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I think, like these debates always end in it depends. We pick sides, but we also know as consultants that, we suggest the solution that fits the people, and we talk with the people and help them decide that and present those options. We need to present and give it back to them as their decision. So that's my key thing, that, whether it be Yammer, Teams, Workplace by Facebook, or whatever tool, okay, talk about it, figure it out, and make sure it fits your culture.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate all of our panelists. Thank you so much for participating in this debate. Thank you for those that watched us live and threw in some questions. We really appreciate you joining this Regarding 365 Episode 4 debate on talking about all org teams. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you next time.